right, hello everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. I'm Jason Harmon.
I am Doug Markham.
And we are in Studio B, Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, sir. Studio B.
At the TWRA headquarters.
That's right. Right here in Nashville. Introduce our guest here in a minute, but you deer hunters out there, I know deer hunting's still a few months away, but we got so many things to talk about. Big meeting with the commission the other day. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, last week was a big week. Big game seasons were set, and it's going to be exciting.
Let folks know right off the bat, last year, with the help of the Wildlife Division, we created a one-page sheet of information that we can put out on our website, and it shows you what the season dates are. It doesn't go into great detail, but it goes ahead and gives you the dates. Going to be working with Tim White of the Wildlife Division to get that out there this week, and it will give you the dates so that you can, if you want to start planning, some of you like to plan for vacations, I know, we can go ahead and let you know what that is.
Right.
The guide will be out weeks from now, but it'll get out there, and once it gets out, you'll also see it posted, all the information on our website at tnwildlife.org, but we'll at least get you started with that one.
That was a real helpful tool last year to see those beginning dates and end dates and season changes and weapon swaps when you can hunt archery, hunt muzzleloader, whatever. That's a good little chart, good little PDF.
And there are a lot of folks that have to plan their vacations ahead of time because of where they work, and they want to know what the dates are. And just remind everyone, too, the waterfowl season's already been set. So we can take care of all of that and let everybody see it. And it was a meeting last week in Dayton, Tennessee. It was a long 2-day meeting.
Right off Chickamauga there.
Right off of Chickamauga. And
we tried, but we didn't have any luck, did we?
Not even on Chickamauga. But we did take Tucker fishing, and we caught a few fish with Tucker.
Yeah. Well, he made the Facebook page and the Twitter page.
He did.
Even the Instagram page.
So he got to drive in a speedboat.
He
got to drive the speedboat.
He did.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
Thank Mr. Doug for taking him out on the speedboat.
On the speedboat. Anyway, all right. Well, lots to talk about. So the only thing that's really going on right now, we got a little squirrel season that's going on, spring squirrel season, and of course fishing's good.
Right around the corner is Free Fishing Day.
I'm glad you said that.
What is that?
That is a lot going on.
That's in next weekend, I think it is.
June 10th, yeah. And go to our website and you'll find about 80 or 90 classes that are out there.
Events
that are out there, events that are out there. And if you want to learn more about it, you can also watch. We had Mike Bramblin on a show recently, and it's out there for you to watch if you want to. Great show with Mike.
Yeah.
All right.
What's cool about that show is the tarp stuff. I hadn't really dove deep into that much, but all those angler recognition programs, that's pretty cool.
It looks a lot of fun.
Different master levels,
I wish they started with fish about this big, though. So I'm never going to make the master level.
Tucker was catching bigger fish than you were.
I know. Tucker was catching more fish than me. Anyway, all right. James Kelly is our guest. He is the Deer Management Program Coordinator. Is that right?
Deer Management Coordinator, leader, state deer biologist, many names. Most states have one, and they have a few different names. But, well, the deer guy. And first time on the program, Jason and I were both thinking, well, we've had James on here before. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
And really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of the show.
Thank you.
I subscribe to it on iTunes and listen to it as a podcast on my drives to and from work. So
awesome. There's our one download, Doug.
There it is. All right. We appreciate it, James. And we're telling James we're going to do more stuff with the show. We're going to keep doing what we're doing, but eventually we're going to take it live and put it out on Facebook.
We are going to try to
take questions from everybody
real soon. Come out live, and y'all can watch this show, and it'll be posted later too. You can watch it later, but chance to see us live. Well, I don't know if you want to watch us live or not.
Well, a chance to ask questions, and that's as much as anything, right?
Yeah.
We want to ask a question, get folks like James on here, and you can write in on Facebook and ask James questions, because y'all might have more than what we think about while we're on here. And so we're going to be doing that in the future. Look forward. James, big meeting the other day. Before we get there, let's talk about you, though, okay?
Okay.
You came to TWRA how long ago?
Little less than a year. So at the end of the month, it'll be a year exactly that I've been here.
Okay, all right. Well, tell us. We're going to get into some of your background, but what is your position? What is it that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I knew you'd ask me that, and I always kind of stumble around it because it's kind of a mile wide and inch deep type position. Basically, if it's got the word deer in it, I'm involved at some level. And some people might think, the state deer biologist, they must be just out there in the field just studying deer all the time, and but there's some field work, but a lot of it is working at a much higher level, trying to manage a statewide program, a statewide deer herd, and manage that resource for the stakeholders or the citizens of Tennessee, hunters and non-hunters alike. And obviously there's a lot of staff that are involved with deer at certain times of the year. And so just making sure everybody's on the same page, everyone's communicating, we're all sticking to standardized protocols for data collection. We collect a lot of data during the deer season, and sometimes there's logistical issues in one area of the state, and I can bring that up and with everybody, and is this an issue? And ultimately all that comes together to kind of get the big picture of where our deer herd is, where we want it to go, what do the people want in certain areas of the state, and manage the resource to kind of meet those needs. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah.
A lot of history on the deer program in Tennessee, James, and a lot of folks that were here are gone that started the program a long time ago. Even before I got here, a lot of those folks had moved on, and then there's been a lot since then and so forth. So as you come in as a new coordinator and working on the state level, do you have to become a historian too? Do you need to understand what went on before to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm still learning a lot of that, and I'm fascinated by it. I want us as an agency or a team where I work together with regional biologists who have deer responsibilities at least part of the year, regional deer biologists. And one of the things I want us to look at is kind of look at the restocking effort and our breeding chronology and see how that all has played out, and if there's any influences there. There's lots of states in the Southeast that have variable breeding dates, and I know we've looked at that some, but I would like to get a more comprehensive look at that and see where, kind of correlate those two, where we've restocked, where we were stocked from, and the breeding seasons. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely.
We'll get to that, to the future, in a few minutes. First, where did you go to school? Where did you go? Where did you get your degree, and where have you worked since then? Before you came to Tennessee, you're a young guy, and you've been to a lot of places already.
Yeah, I've been all over the country, well, at least the eastern seaboard, mm-hmm. anyway. And I started in Pennsylvania, not working, but that's where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, Pennsylvania is a big deer hunting state, has a strong hunting heritage. And that's where I'm from, is very rural, north central to northeastern Pennsylvania, from an area where, first day of deer season, schools were closed down, factories are closed down. I mean, it was a deer hunting community. And so at a young age, I just fell in love with all things deer hunting, really. I love to be outside, love to hunt, fish. But really, it was deer hunting. And at the time when I was a teenager, and deer management was very controversial in Pennsylvania, and their state deer program leader was on TV at least once a week, and I said, I want that guy's job. and here I am. But to kind of get there, I went to a state school and studied biology, just a general degree in biology. And for my graduate degree, I went to University of Georgia and studied under Dr. Carl Miller, who's just a deer guru, and I think I've heard it said he's the most published researcher on deer, that he has more publications pertaining to deer than anyone else. And so I learned a ton from him and worked on a coyote deer project there for my master's work. From there, I moved to Florida, in Tallahassee, Florida, and I was the assistant deer program coordinator, and I was there for 3 years. And from there was an opportunity in New York to be the big game management section biometrician. So basically, it's a fancy word for working with data, doing analysis, and I gained a lot of experience there and learned a lot of cool tricks. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be the deer guy and influence statewide deer management. And so then the opportunity came up here in Tennessee, and so here we are. And all along that journey, got married, and we've had 3 kids. I think we have a kid in 3 different states. Had one in New York just before we moved here, and so it's been a journey. But we like to say that we're home now. We're home now. So excited to be here.
Seems like anywhere you go where you have a deer program, anywhere in the country, you're going to be thrown into the fire, because that's just deer. I think they're in great shape in Tennessee. Have been for a long time, but there's so many opinions out there, James, from the hunters. Every hunter wants something different, it seems like, and it'd almost be like talking politics. I think if you sit down at a round table talking about deer, I think it could get that heated with some folks. So how do you handle that, especially as a young guy coming into Tennessee? How do you handle all these people wanting different things?
Yeah, so that's the crux of deer management, and there often are conflicting interests, as you mentioned, even within hunting groups, and that's where most of the conflict can come from. But then there's also conflicts with farmers who may or may not also be a hunter.
True.
Residents who's trying to grow a garden, or motorists, just everyday person driving to work every day. And so those are all things that you have to consider. And so for me, and really to be successful in deer management, is to have more of a systematic, high-level approach. And how do we build a program that's going to incorporate all of these things, and how do we weight these different values, and what is, maybe this hunter's upset, but what do all the hunters think in this geographic area? And so then you'd have to take a systematic, survey approach, and so there's experimental design to get. So it's basically operating at a larger scale and trying to develop a system and a program and something that's gonna.
Well, my early days here, when deer restoration was pretty much at its end when I started. You're talking 25, 30 years ago. There were still some deer restoration, maybe a tad being done. But there were still a lot of concern about deer populations in that time, and they did deer modeling and trying to figure out how many deer were taken during the year and what the harvest or what the bag limits would be the next year. Is that still a concern, or is Tennessee's deer herd in great shape? And so your modeling, if there is modeling anymore, only concerns what you just said, and that is having to deal with the human dimensions.
Yeah, so, we do need to start monitoring the human dimensions part of it, and that's in the queue, so to speak. That's something we're going to start looking at. But yeah, you're right. There used to be much more intensive population modeling, and we're going to get back to that. We're still collecting all of the data that would be necessary to run those models, and we're going to start looking at that again, and not to know exactly how many deer are out there on the landscape. We'll never know exactly how many, but there are methods out there that you can estimate. And really what we look for is just something that's going to track with abundance, whether the population is increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. And so at any given level, and really the management unit level, we have L, A, B, and so on and so forth, those units now. And we're going to take a closer look at those and in the future, and get those metrics at that management unit level, the abundance, the stakeholder piece, and then the other component is what we're trying to develop a strategy for, is the habitat, and really so that's the forest regeneration. And so coming up with a protocol to monitor that at the macro scale, if you will. So
do you have to combine that too with the loss of habitat over time? Is that going to be a big issue? We saw a map the other day at the last commission meeting where a lot of Tennessee is going to be replaced. A lot of those forests and grasslands, and it's going to be replaced with more suburban neighborhoods. Is that all a part of what you have to deal with?
Yeah, that's what we'll definitely have to consider that. And deer are generalists though, so if you give them a little bit, they'll figure out a way to make it work.
I live a mile from this agency in the suburban area, and we see them down by a little creek by our house all the time. So
yeah, and that's an issue that we'll continue to explore, how to And there's a solution out there. It's just coming up with how do you make it work. I mean, there's hunters who want access and deer to hunt, and there's residents who are having deer issues and want fewer deer. It seems like you could just take that group and bring it with this group and you have a solution, but there's a lot of issues, but exploring that's part of the...
You have been to several different states, and we're going to get to the meeting here in a little bit because I want to talk about what happened at the meeting. There's not a lot of change, I don't think, but you'll tell us more about that. But are all states different? You grew up in Pennsylvania, you're in Tennessee, you've been in Georgia, you've been in New York. Do we all manage deer differently, or do they all have the same problems, or a combination of both?
Yeah, I think there's definitely different approaches in different states, different hunting cultures, and different cultures in general. Up north, it's very controversial. There's just a lot of hunters. I think New York and Pennsylvania are two of the highest hunter per capita. But it's different though. They got 2-week seasons, and everyone goes out. They don't go outside the whole year, but the deer season comes, they go out and shoot their deer, and they want to be able to shoot their deer on that really opening day. They want and they want to see a lot of deer because that's what they used to see, and that's maybe a little bit different than Tennessee. Up north they had a phase where deer were just out of control, and so there was a whole generation that was just used to going hunting and seeing hundreds of deer on opening day, and then they've realized, well, the forest can't sustain this, and so they've scaled it back, and even still they're having it's just much more of a fight in the north. Deer management, it's not as controversial in southern states, and longer seasons. It's a little more laid back, if you will. But overall, there is the same issues. It just seems to be a little more amplified
in the north and the south.
Yeah,
which maybe the long, because our season starts in September and goes to January. It's a long season, so there's plenty of opportunity out there. Where I keep seeing, where we've seen for years, if there's some heat out there, it's do you kill 1 deer or 2 deer, or do you kill 8 bucks? I'm talking about, or antlered deer. Yeah, that's where, and that's. I think that's going to go on and on. You have those opinions out there, and where do you see the agency coming down on that? And that's a tough question to ask you because that involves commissioners voting on stuff and proposals and a lot of action. But is that going to keep going on, or one day will that be resolved, or you think it is already?
Well, I think what we need to decide is what our objectives are, and that's what we're going to be starting looking at over the next year or so, is identifying what the objective is, and breaking the state up into management units. We might take another look at those, or maybe use the current ones, but basically identifying where do we want to go in one unit, age structure, or the quality deer management approach might be the objective based on what stakeholders are saying.
Stakeholders are hunters, right?
Well, there's hunters, there's residents, there's we got to manage
farmers,
all
of them. Okay,
yeah. And then there's the future generation, the people who aren't here yet and don't have a voice, and we got our charges to manage for them. So whatever we're doing, we got to make sure it's sustainable. So we're not doing anything that's permanently going to damage the resource or any other resource indirectly. That's setting the objective is what we need to identify, and then because some people have ideas on what we should be doing, but when you ask them what the ultimate outcome of what they want is, it's something that those two things are conflicting. They want more deer, but they also want to be able to shoot more deer. The primary way to have more deer is to shoot less, so the population can grow.
Yeah.
So that's we call those fundamental objectives. What's the outcome you want to see, and then we'll take a look at the techniques to get there. But first, you're going to what's that desired future condition, and then we'll look at the tools in the toolbox.
There's never anything as simple as asking one question. There's just way too many more questions that follow that question.
Exactly.
It's like taking a polling survey or whatever. Okay, James, let's let's talk real quick because I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. We could talk to you about it, and we'll get you back in here. And like I say, we're gonna do some live stuff. We'll get James on and let y'all ask James questions. But let's talk about the meeting the other day. The Dayton meeting. Were there very many changes in the upcoming any season date changes or any major changes coming up for this deer season in 2018?
No major changes. There was some discussion on the antler deer definition that was changed for this past season. It went from 3 inches or greater as an antler deer. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not
That's
using
okay.
the legal wording, but that was what it was. And then this last year, it went to any visible antler protruding above the hairline.
Okay.
So that was this last year, and we shared some year one, kind of what we saw from that. But we want to continue to monitor to make sure what we're seeing is actually due to those changes.
All right, that's going to be the question. Is there was some consideration, some thought of removing the hairline and going back to the way it was. Your study from just 1 year didn't show that it affected. Was it fawns? It didn't really show that it affected.
Well, so we get our hands on about 5,000 deer a year.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those are bucks, some of those are does.
We physically like at check stations, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our
All right.
staff will
Right.
age, and it's called getting the age and sex distribution of the harvest. And so from that sample that we get for all across the state, we can estimate what the composition of the harvest was overall. And so the proportion of fawns did decline, but we had a slight increase in the proportion of yearlings. And the intent of the rule was to protect that segment of the population, so bucks that had less than 3 inches of antler, which some of those are fawns and some of those are yearlings. And yearlings that fall into that category are deer that were, when they were fawns, they were born late in the fawning season, so they're behind developmentally. So you might have a yearling that has a very short spike, and that can be less than 3 inches of antler. So that's the two age classes that this definition will impact. And so we looked at what was the percent change in that, and it looks like that it actually increased the percentage of bucks in the harvest with less than 3 inches of antler, but only by a few percentage points. But the objective was to decrease that percentage. So we want to look at it at least one more year and see what that. If we repeat that result, then we think that the intended objective was not met and actually is having the opposite impact. And so then we'll bring it to our commission for discussion on whether they want to keep that.
Maybe 1 year studies, but what's your guess as to why that happened? Why do you think that happened?
Well, so it is plausible that it was that we made that happen with the rule change because our antlered harvest almost always exceeds our antler-less harvest. But if you look at our regs, we have much more liberal antler-less regulations.
A lot more.
But despite having more liberal antler-less regulations, our antlered harvest always exceeds antler-less. So there's more pressure on the antlered segment of the population. And the antler-less is, at least in the gun season, it's an additional privilege. Not everyone buys that. But so anyway, the bottom line is antlered has more pressure, and we moved that line from 3 inches down to visible above the hairline. So now this segment is now in the more pressured segment.
Okay.
That's kind of the theory behind it. So we're going to continue to look at that and see if that result repeats itself, and if that's the case, then we think that's definitely what happened.
Any proof that one of the things that folks were saying the most out on our Facebook or wherever, or calling you guys, maybe writing you guys, was there would be a lot of young deer laying in the field. Any proof that happened at all, or is there any way we could know?
Based on our discussions with law enforcement, that wasn't really an issue this past year, and and it's a very small segment of the population anyway, so it's not going to.
Sure.
It's not going to. That's not going to happen that often, and because we are $2 state, you do have, depending on where you are in your antlered bag, but most often, if you're in the rare case that you do make the mistake, you can use one of that antlered bag to cover a mistake.
Okay, and going back just to make sure I'm understanding right, more deer under 3 inches were killed than you thought would be killed.
Yeah, it went from around 7%. That was kind of the average for all previous years, and then it jumped up to 12%.
But they got checked in as antlered.
Well, they would have been checked in as antlered, yes. Yeah. And these are all based on deer that we got
the 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but in Tennessee, there were how many deer taken statewide?
I don't have the exact number, but it was 157 and change, 157,000. Yeah, it was about a 6% decline overall.
Okay.
But when you look at the kind of the last 12 years, it looks stable. It's not a precipitous decline at all. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that happened. Like you say, that if you look at the chart, similar like that happened. So the commission then, my understanding from watching the meeting was they decided after you made your presentation to say, hey, let's give this at least another year, maybe 2 years, to see if what we thought was going to happen happens, and if it doesn't, things may change. Is that my interpretation correct?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, several other states have this same rule of visible antler protruding above the hairline, or some variant of that. It's visible antler, and they're able to manage their deer herd just fine. So even if we didn't change it, it would be okay. But again, it's identifying those objectives. If the objective is to protect this segment, then we need to take a closer look at the data. Is this getting us where we wanted the rule change to go? And that's when we would consider if we could go back or not. You
guys asked every year. You asked for hunting change. You let the hunters out there or the stakeholders let you know what they would like to see this changes in the season or additions or whatever.
Yeah.
Every year y'all do that. Did you get a majority or a large amount of people who were just hating this new law, or was it about even, or where did it fall?
So if we did get comments, it was, probably the most, it's top 1 or 2 that we got comments on were pertain to this, and it was negative feedback. But in proportion to the number of hunters we have out there, I mean, it was a minuscule amount. We're talking probably less. I don't know the exact number. I know it was probably less than 100 overall, and we have hundreds of thousands of deer hunters. So it's you can't really base a decision off that small of a sample, and so that's where the more systematic survey approach, we're going to start engaging our stakeholders through random sampling and surveys and starting getting a feel for where they stand on some of these issues.
And just legit, when y'all get ready to start doing all that, let us know. We'll have you back on there. We'll do the live piece. We'll talk about it. We'll put it out everywhere and try to help you get information on what you're doing, and try to get all these hunters out there. Let them know how they feel. A lot of times you get the people that are mad. We all do that. I do that when I'm whatever, but the folks that like the way it is need to let you know too.
And that's not generally in human nature to
feels better to be mad.
The public, especially in a public comment period, they're not going to take their time out of their day to tell you this is great. Some do, and we appreciate those folks, but the normal is when they're upset about something.
Yep. Okay. All right. I stay mad at DirecTV, so I let them know all the time, right? I stay happy at some of the others, but anyway. All right, James, you did great.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you more about the future. No, you come back.
I'm glad to come back. I really enjoyed this.
This is the first time on here, and you act like you've done it 100 times.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
He's a natural.
He is. He's also an IT geek. We're messing with him. We're learning from it anyway. All right, Jason.
Hey, thanks for watching and listening to this show, and hey, thanks for being on, James. It's out there, and you can find it anywhere. Tennessee Wildcast at tnwildlife.org is the best place to start. Listen, watch, and keep following our social media.
Hey, keep watching our social media, Facebook, and as I said, we're going to go live with some of this stuff, and you can get more involved.
Yep.
And we'll get James back on, we promise.